Overnight, the United States launched fresh strikes against a Houthi radar site in Yemen, following a joint operation between the UK and the US yesterday. Nearly 30 Houthi positions were targeted during the first wave of strikes. In a statement, the Houthis' Supreme Political Council has vowed to retaliate, threatening that all American and British interests have become legitimate targets for the Yemeni armed forces. In Yemen's capital of Sana'a, tens of thousands have joined a military parade and protest in support of Gaza. Lot to deal with here, isn't there? Joining me now in the studio is former Head of Counterterrorism at the MOD, Major Chip Chapman. Chip, if I can call you that, thank you very much for joining us this afternoon. I'm glad to have someone of your expertise and background on this one because, frankly, I think most of us find this development absolutely terrifying. Can you just bring us up to speed on the developments that happened last night?
Well, what I think happened last night was actually probably a re-attack on an original target, which, as Sean Bell said earlier on, you do battlefield damage assessment. They probably didn't knock that target out first time and went and re-attacked it to make sure that the eyes and ears of the targeting of the Houthis is degraded in a certain aspect. What is important, though, is that more importantly, there was another missile launched by the Houthis, which was the 28th attack since the 19th of November. And of course, the original attack plays into deterrence theory, that is deterrence by punishment, try and alter the risk-reward calculus of the Houthis. So it's really seeing if that carries on into the future. Will they re-attack again? That's the Houthis. How do you get out of this conundrum? Now, one of the ways you might get out of it is, of course, although the Houthis are part of the axis of resistance in terms of the surrounding Israel, as it were, one of the proxy forces of Iran. They're also guided in a way by Iran, and therefore Iran and its relationship with China and Russia is important in terms of the Chinese want global trade to flow, and they could have leverage over the Iranians to say enough is enough, please rein in the Houthis. So there's a lot out there, both in the diplomatic and military spheres for the future.
It was the Chinese that brokered the peace deal, as such as it is, between Saudi Arabia and Iran. Now, that looks likely that that's not going to hold out much longer as well.
Well, that's an interesting one, because back in March, the peace deal, as you call it, between the Saudis and Iranians was really reopening of embassies and things like that. At that time, we were talking, or analysts were talking about a post-US Middle East. Now, the events of the last 3 months have absolutely shown that there isn't a post-Middle East, US Middle East, and that the US is still massively engaged there because of what's happening. It's events, dear boy, as they always say.
And interestingly, last night, the Houthi missile, it did fall short, thankfully, but it was on a Panama flag tanker carrying Russian oil. So this just gets worse, everything you read. Do you think, though, that the latest developments will increase the terror threat? I know it's like, well, what about us over here? But will increase the terror threat in this country?
It's a tricky one to answer that for this reason. Most of the terrorism in the UK and Europe is Salafist jihadist, that is Sunni terrorism. And that is indeed the definition by Europol, that it is Sunni revivalism. The Houthis are actually Azadi Shia, not generally involved in terrorism. That doesn't mean that the Shia can't be suicide bombers. Some of them are. But it's not really a connection between the two. And that is one of the fractures, again, that you see in the Middle East. The Shia-Sunni split, which most people would say dated from 1979 and the revolution there, both in Iran and the storming of the Grand Mosque in Saudi Arabia. So as a potential, there is a Yemeni diaspora, but there's a difference between radicalisation and having a grievance. You need an ideology and a grievance, and the Shia don't really have an ideology in the same way that the Sunnis do in terms of Al-Qaeda and the Islamic State.